Well, the people who put together the I Ching were very interested in change and time, in the same way that our culture since classical Greece has been interested in matter. The people who put together the I Ching were interested in time, and I think they got quite far in their exposition of it. They were interested in why things happen as they happen. This is a different question than we ask in the West. In the West, we've asked the question, what are things made of? And we've come a great distance toward understanding that. I think the I Ching represents an effort to answer a different question. The question, why do things happen the way they happen? Our answers in the West, probability theory, causal unfolding, logical necessity, are really not very satisfying when applied to the world of politics, love affairs, the social world of human beings. And that was where the Confucian and Taoist mentality was focused, was in the world of human interaction. And so, rather than viewing the I Ching as a primitive cultural artifact from the distant past, I view it as a arguably very sophisticated cultural artifact, representing a cultural point of view about which we know very little. And in order to understand this point of view, we're going to have to educate ourselves in the worldview of the I Ching, which is very different from the world we're familiar with. Well, there's certainly a growing awareness in Western science that the situation is a good deal more complex than cheerful, rational materialism would have us believe. Taoism is essentially an appreciation of pattern. It's a wave theory of nature. Things have influences on other things at a distance. It's a holistic theory of nature. Things are seamless. It is an acausal theory of nature. Things are not only connected through logical necessity, but they're connected in other ways through what we would call morphogenetic resonance. So yes, I think science in the 20th century has grown generally more holistic. This comes from psychology at one end and quantum physics at the other. And of course, quantum physics and psychology meet in biology. And the I Ching, one of the striking things about it to the Western mind is its incredible isomorphism to the DNA and the way in which molecular coding of hereditary material takes place. So, in a way, this turn of Western science toward more holistic and unified theories of nature also represents a turning toward Oriental ideas. And in someone like Joseph Needham, these two impulses, the Oriental and the philosophical and scientific, are unified. And Needham had a great and deep respect for the I Ching and wrote extensively about it. And then, of course, Carl Jung, the founder of depth psychology, found in the images of the I Ching a mirror for his own assumptions about the structure of the unconscious, as he had found those things in dreams and alchemy and other concerns. And physicists, Jung published at one point on the I Ching with the physicist Wolfgang Pauli. Physicists found in the acausal connectedness upon which the I Ching was founded something similar to the non-Boolean logic that they were forced to use in constructing quantum theory. Ultimately, I believe the power of the I Ching lies in the fact that it's an insight into the structure of nature, not the structure of matter, atoms, molecular systems, but the structure of process. In the West, we really have gotten no further than that process has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The Chinese saw it. That's essentially a 4-element or a 3-element theory of process. The Chinese have a 64-element theory of process that allows them to perform a complex algebra of calculation as to what forces are impinging on any event. And then they have this method of sortilege, of divination, which allows them to extract out of a unique moment a hexagram appropriate to that moment, and then to refer to a body of interpretation that illuminates that. Well, yes, I guess if I take my own opinions about the I Ching seriously, then what I come away with is the idea that the world is more plotted, more structured, more ordered than science has led us to suppose. In other words, science gives us a world where many things are called probable, but no theory at all about how out of this class of probable things, certain things actually come to be. And this is, after all, what we want to know. Why did A happen and not B? My immersion in the I Ching leaves me with the conclusion that just as where you are in space, whether you're in a narrow mountain valley or in a broad desert, determines much of what is going to happen to you, where you are in time, similarly, determines the kind of experiences you're going to have. And not all times are the same. When there are times of novelty and opportunity, chance-taking is repaid well. In times of resistance and habit, chance-taking can be fatal or at least tragic. So the whole notion of Taoism, and in later Confucian thinking too, is this kind of sensing into the moment to know what is appropriate. And in much Western thinking, it's been sort of presented as a mystical thing, or an intuitive thing, or an impossible to explain thing. I think it just simply was something that we didn't understand, and that in fact it's much more like a science, this feeling into the moment. Now in the West we have it with astrology, a similar tradition of trying to feel into the moment, but again, the Western mind is so obsessed with matter that it turns into observational astronomy under the rule of the calculus, and the, shall we call, the psychological dimension of it then appears absurd and is forgotten or debunked or looked down upon. The Chinese, by not having this strong dualism between the internal and external world, were able to create a kind of physics that was also for them a kind of psychology. And the I Ching is the distillation and the quintessence of this way of understanding the world. It leads to the idea that what is called Tao is in principle not immune to a mathematical analysis. That what these sages are talking about is an invisible force which moves through the world, building structure up and sustaining process at times, and at other times impeding structure and tearing down and dissipating process, according to mysterious laws. Well, all that mysterious laws mean are laws that you haven't understood yet. And I maintain that it is true what the Taoists are saying. There is a mysterious force which ebbs and flows in time. It isn't electromagnetic, it isn't photonic, it isn't any of these things, but it touches everything. Men, atoms, organisms, societies, and these are all playthings in its hands. This is the Tao. So then the sage, the life of the sage, is an attempt to understand this. And I think when a life lived in accordance to the Tao, however it is perceived, however it is known, is a life free of anxiety. And this is the highest ideal of these Eastern systems of thought, to essentially become one with the flow of nature, and thereby an example to emperor, commoner, and everybody else. So then the I Ching is one of these very rare pieces of human literature where people actually understood something and they got it down and they left it as a signpost along the road. And if it resonates with you, if you feel what this is all about, then a life lived in the light of these writings and writings about these writings is a life free of anxiety, open to the problems of other people, and capable of being an example of how to live in the world. And I think it's great that you're doing this, and I hope it means that people are sensitizing themselves to the felt presence of experience. That's what the Tao is, that's what intuition is, that's what the I Ching can help us toward, is an experience of our own being in time.